Welcome to the I Tried to Be Straight podcast with Susie.
Season 2 and Nate.
Susie in season 2. And
This
Nate
is the season 2 premiere
of
I Try to Be Straight podcast.
We're super stoked to be back.
With Susie and Nate.
Yeah.
We're super stoked to be back. No, it's been a really good summer, and thank you for letting us take a break. I know you didn't let us, but we still appreciate it.
Did you do anything fun during our break, Nate?
Yeah, not to get like deep right away, but I feel like it's been a good time of soul searching. I've kind of read some books and dug into my theology a little bit, so that's been really good, kind of centered in.
Yeah.
Camping?
Your birthday.
My birthday?
Yeah, that's fun.
I turned another year. I don't feel old, but I'm getting old, so I'm going to have to come to terms with that at some point. What about you? How's
You're
your
a young
summer?
soul. My summer was great. I think I spent it with my sister, had a baby. So if you remember back to a few episodes, my sister was pregnant and baby's here, and it's been awesome.
You're an auntie now.
I know.
That's what can top that? That's like the best summer thing ever. I know. I have 14 nieces and nephews, so I guess that does top that.
Yeah, that's by a couple.
14 tops that. Couple 13 more than you. So catch up.
Well, we decided to pull all the strings for this season, and we have a super incredible guest. Mm-hmm. And Nate, you wanna?
Yeah, this guest worked in Love in Action. I don't know if you've seen the movie Boy Erased, or I mean, some of you have, some of you haven't, but it covers conversion therapy. This pastor's kid that goes through it. The story is really close to my heart because it's kind of similar to mine in a lot of ways, but I didn't do as much actual conversion therapy. But we have a guest that helped run the Love in Action program, who went through a pretty crazy journey and is now out of the closet and married, I believe, and a successful gay relationship. And his journey is pretty wild. I've looked at a little bit online, and I really love what he has to say and love where his heart's at with the whole thing. So without further ado, welcome John Smid to the I Try to Be Straight podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here. And it's interesting you said my journey is pretty wild. And I've got friends that I've known for a long time who've said, John, we never know what we're going to hear next because you have been through so many things and you've reinvented your life so many times that, tell us what's up now, what's the next story. And the reason for that is, first of all, I have this drive to be right. Not right in the sense of I have to be right, dogma, but I feel like my life has to be right. I have to be in the right place. I've got to know that where I'm at is correct, it's right, it's true, it's real. And so in my life's journey, I discover new things, I discover new information, I discover new experiences. And as I do that, I'm always open to modifying my life to be in a better place, to be more authentic, to be more right. And so that's a very strong drive of mine.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd love to get some context into how you got where you are, maybe a little of your childhood growing up, and how you decided to get into what you did for a while in the conversion therapy movement.
Yeah, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, so I was in kind of an urban setting, a suburban setting actually. And due to my parents' divorce and my mom's remarriage, our family life kind of went into a lot of turmoil. My stepdad was a pretty angry alcoholic. My mom was pretty dysfunctional. She later in life, we discovered that she actually had a mental illness called sociopathy. And what that meant to us growing up is that my mom was not a nurturing person. She wasn't someone who understood other people had emotions or needs. It was very narcissistic. Pre-adolescent years and my adolescent years, I really was just trying to survive. I had to pretty much take care of myself. I had to provide for myself. I started working when I was 14. And because of my survival needs during junior high and high school, I really kind of checked out on my own life experience, relationships, my own sexuality. I just lived every day the best I could, and sexuality to me was really not on the top of my burner. It was not the most important thing. Just getting by day to day, just trying to somehow stay away from all the negativity that was going on at home and a lot of self-protection. So I was very, very naive. I did date a couple of girls in high school. Neither of them were involving any kind of sexual expression, didn't even have a lot of kissing, or they were just people I felt like I could be comfortable with relationally, or someone that I felt understood me. And so when I was about 19, I was dating a girl that I had gone through high school with, and our dating relationship was kind of off and on, back and forth. And I met a guy where I worked that I just fell head over heels in love with. I mean, I didn't know what that meant at the time. All I knew was I wanted to spend every bit of time I could around him. I didn't know anything about being gay. That wasn't anything I'd ever experienced or looked at in my life, and certainly didn't think that about him. All I knew is that emotionally I was very, very attached to him. He was dating a girl himself, and he moved away to Chicago, and that absolutely devastated me. I mean, I was absolutely brokenhearted that this man had left, and I couldn't be around him anymore every day. That devastation led me to turn to this girl I was dating, and she was someone that I guess we kind of mutually agreed we could get married. We should get married. And in my mind, getting married to her was another escape. It was a way to consign myself to being married, looking to having a family, and I didn't have to worry about all the pain that I was dealing with from the loss of my friend. So we got married, and a year after we graduated from high school, and a couple of years later, we had our first daughter, and then another 18 months later, we had our second daughter. And for me, life was just about being in a family, having my kids, and I worked a full-time job, and I also had a part-time job to make ends meet. And so I just stayed busy all the time, and I felt like I was successful because we lived in suburbia, had a new house, had nice things, had a new car. To me, I had achieved nirvana. I had achieved the top of my list of desires and thought everything was okay. Except I looked around my neighborhood, I looked at other people, and I just was so detached. I was so unfulfilled emotionally and relationally. And I looked at other men in the neighborhood that we lived in, and I thought, how could I ever be like them? You know, they're different than me. I don't understand who they are. I don't even know who I am. So I was really very, very confused, while outwardly seeming to be very successful in terms of achievement. So one day when at my job, some of the people were having a conversation, and they brought up the subject of homosexuality. Well, of course, this was in 1979. We didn't really talk about sexuality a lot in those days, but that subject came up. And as soon as that word came across my brain, I looked inside and I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. That is the missing link. That's who I am. That's why I've had all these struggles. That's why I am the way I am relationally. I must be gay.
Wow.
And so I knew that there was another guy that I worked with who was gay, and I asked him if we could go out sometime and have a conversation. I said, I'd just like to, talk with you about some things. So that evening ended up in my first gay sexual encounter. And I always have said that, he took advantage of me and I took advantage of the opportunity. And for me, that sexual experience confirmed it, that I was absolutely attracted to men, sexually, relationally. That was my bent. That's who I was. And so I went home like 2 weeks later, and my wife could tell there was something had changed in me. And I said, well, this is a deal. I'm gay and I want a divorce. And it wasn't too difficult for me to say the divorce part, because we had gotten to a place where I felt completely inadequate with her. I just could not find a way to please her. And of course, now as I look back 50 years ago, I couldn't please her. There's no way she could ever be satisfied or gratified as a wife, as a woman, to a man who's gay. That just was never going to work.
Wow.
And so 6 months later, we got divorced, and I was 24 years old, and I completely came out of the closet. And so I met one guy, and then I met another guy, and they didn't work out, and several of these relationship experiences were kind of painful for me, and it was difficult because I didn't want to break up and get back together, and I didn't want to disappoint people, and I didn't want to be disappointed. I just wanted to find somebody to love and care about. And a girl that I worked with was very open about being a born-again Christian. And she had a Bible on her desk and crosses, and she was very evangelistic. She talked to everybody about Jesus. She was very bubbly and friendly. And I worked right next to her, and we had a lot of conversations about the Bible and about God and about what this all meant. And she knew that I was struggling. She knew I was experiencing relationship difficulties, and she said, "Hey, John, I can relate. I've been divorced. I've struggled with alcohol, but I finally found Jesus was the answer for me, and a relationship with him and my church. So why don't you come to my church?" So she invited me to her church several times, and finally I decided to take advantage of her opportunity, and I thought, I'm still after wanting to be right. I want to be the best person I can be, and I can't imagine a better person than to be a Christian. That's got to be the top of the line. That's got to be the best person anybody could be, is to be a godly Christian man, to be that person that people can look up to and admire. And so I thought, I'm listening to all the things she's saying, so I need to try this out. So I ended up somewhere in the mix of all of it becoming a Christian. In my own heart, I made that transition. Then all of a sudden I went to my pastor and told him where I was coming from. I said, here I am. I've had these gay relationships. Went through the whole story with him. And he said, "Well, John, it says right here in Romans that you can't be gay. That's a sin. And so I guess we can agree that's what the Bible says." And I said, "Well, I have to agree with you because you seem to know better than I do, because you're a pastor, you're trained, you're educated, all that stuff. So I guess I need to give up my gay relationships. I need to put that away, much like an alcoholic puts away his alcohol." So I told my partner at the time, "It's over, I've got to break up." And again, that wasn't too hard because he was somebody that I couldn't trust. There was a lot of trust issues. And so I just said, I've got to just click the off button and move on. And so in February of 1984, I had my last gay association with my partner and friends at the bar and all of that, and I completely committed myself to this Christian thing. So I heard on Focus on the Family that there were ex-gay ministries, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's me, and that's awesome. There's specialized ministries for this. And so I sent letters to Exodus International, Love in Action, and Desert Stream in Southern California. And I got a phone call one night from the director's wife at Love in Action. And she said, "John, we've got a job opening here for a house director, house manager at one of our homes. And it's a 1-year commitment. It's a volunteer position, so you don't get paid, but you get free board and room. You get to live in one of our houses." And I just was overwhelmed with excitement. I thought, oh my gosh, this is the answer to my prayer. So that's how I got into it.
Wow.
That's what led me there.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like it was all ordained, like this is absolutely what I'm supposed to do. And so I got there and I loved it. I loved the people. I loved being there. I loved doing what I was doing. I was grocery shopping. I was managing house chores. And I started working in the office at the ministry, and I began to answer letters. And again, I just want to lay this out there. One of the things I have seen about ex-gay ministry almost across the board is a lack of professional credentialing, a lack of following guidelines that are professional guidelines, because what I've discovered is Christian ex-gay ministry doesn't fit into any pocket. It isn't anything that comes out of any grad school or any counseling school or any professional credentialing. It doesn't come from any of that. And so their message is, we are biblical counselors. We counsel people according to the Bible, according to the scriptures. We're Christians. We're different than the world. We're not like the world. We don't have to follow the world's standards. We have to follow God's standards. And so right from the very beginning, I just got to tell the truth. I'm beginning to get brainwashed I'm beginning to be told that I just need to follow what you're telling me because the world doesn't know how to do this. The world isn't right. The world has it wrong. The world is sinful. The world is bad. And we're Christians and we've got the truth and we know what's right. And so I started believing that more and more every day. I thought I was right. Again, I want to be right. Well, the Bible has to be right because it's the only truth. And so I'm being brainwashed by these evangelical ministry guidelines and teachings and structures. And so I really thought I was where I was supposed to be. I thought it was the best place. And before long, I started being exposed to media opportunities. I was never trained in media. I wasn't trained in, I was only out 2 years from my last gay relationship, and I was only involved in this ministry for like 6 months, and I was already on the Larry King live show, and they were interviewing. So I'm thinking, wow, I'm on the media, they're interviewing, this is awesome. But I didn't know what I was talking about. I was just regurgitating what I thought I was supposed to, and I believed it was right. That started my whole 22-year ministry with Love in Action. And we were always full with people who would come into the residential program. But one thing we never did is we never looked at recidivism. We didn't look at follow-up. We didn't really want to know. It's like we didn't want to know, because if somebody left the ministry, graduated, finished their program, our answer was, if they want follow-up, they can contact us. We're not going to proselytize. We're not going to go chasing them down. If they want help, if they want support, we are available. Our phones are open. Our people are open. If you want a follow-up plan, you can call us. You can get with us and get that. Well, nobody took advantage of it. I mean, we hardly ever heard from anybody after they left the program.
And this is after hundreds of people going through the program, people actually coming back and giving reports of it working were basically almost zero.
Yeah, we didn't hardly hear very many people that said it worked. But we didn't look at that. It's like, we just didn't want to know. And it wasn't something overt. It wasn't like, oh, we don't really want to know. But I think underneath it all, I know for me personally, I knew there were a lot of people that were not following the program. I knew that. Because I would hear rumors, I would hear stories, I would hear these people, well, they're not doing well, they're falling, well, they're back in the lifestyle, and I thought, well, there's quite a crowd of them out there that seem to be back in the lifestyle, but we have what's true, we have what's right. If you follow the program, if you're obedient, if you're repentant, you can have a life separate from homosexuality. You can overcome it. You can live obediently in Christ, yada, yada, yada. You can, if you apply it, it works. So it's on them.
Yeah. As you were saying earlier, they got you into such a state with religion that you kind of ignored your instincts at this point, right? There are things that didn't make sense, but you kind of just followed the dogma that you were being taught and didn't really look too closely at it.
We were taught that we couldn't trust ourselves.
Yes.
Don't listen, listen to God's word. You can't trust your feelings. Your heart is wicked. Your heart is wicked. That's the scripture we'd hear. And so we more and more distrusted this, our gut. And I'm a gut person. I have a lot of intuition. I have a lot of gut thinking in my life. And I was taught that I couldn't trust any of that. Yeah, it's been very interesting, because I've spent the last 12 or 14 years making amends, having conversations, looking back at all those lives, and having communication with as many people as I can. And it's been a real learning experience about what those years were really like for the client, for the program member. There were 475 clients in the program during the 22 years I was there. But I also was in relationship with hundreds and hundreds of others out in the field and through Exodus conferences and people that came to our support group ministries. And I mean, there are a ton of people that I've known through the years. And I don't know a single one, first of all, that has ever become straight. having been gay. I'm not talking about bisexual. I'm not talking about, the myriads of spectrums that are involved in this. But somebody who is truly 100%, yes, I'm attracted to the same gender, still are as much attracted to the same gender as they ever were. I've never known a single person where that's been changed.
During that time that you were in the program, running those programs, speaking to the legitimacy of those programs, what was going on internally within you when, let's say, like you had an attraction for a man and somebody caught your eye? Like, what was that process like for you?
I'll just talk about a point in 1995. I was on the board of directors for Exodus International. And as a board member, we were given an opportunity to give a keynote talk or speech at the annual conference. And this particular one, I chose the topic of honesty. And I titled it, Honesty, Is It Really the Best Policy? And what I did at that conference was I spoke honestly about myself, meaning I still have same-sex attractions. I'm attracted to men. I've learned how to deal with it. I've learned how to be faithful to my wife because at that point I was married. And I was honest about that faithfulness. I'm as obedient as I can be to the things I teach and preach and believe, but I'm still attracted to men. And I spoke that publicly in front of 800 people at this conference. And I said, so what I challenge us all to think about is if you call yourself ex-gay, and you're still having sex with the same gender, then I would challenge you to not call yourself ex-gay. You're not ex-gay unless you're ex-gay. So in my opinion, that truth began to shift the whole Exodus network. Because after that, people started using the terms same-sex attracted. People used to say, well, yes, I'm still attracted to the same gender, but... And I found more and more people were being honest about their attractions. So I think it was very positive. On the other side of it, I was never given another opportunity to speak at an Exodus conference.
Wow. Because you're challenging things they kind of had as their framework. They didn't really...
Yeah. They didn't want me. They considered I was kind of a loose cannon, I guess.
What made you start to open it up and really question it? Because I know along with your journey... were you watching other people struggle? I know there were some people that had really intense stories that went through these programs after. You're probably not seeing them fully during, but did you start to see some stories from people that were doing really poorly after these programs that made you think about it?
I knew of people that were doing poorly, but I was still, up until the time I left Love in Action, which was in 2008, up until that time, I was still kind of in a mode of blaming the lack of accomplishment, the lack of success on the person. It was like, well, they're not applying it. Well, they're not going to church anymore. They're not walking with the Lord. They're not, they just want their flesh. It was still, and I was in a community of people that kind of thought that way. Like we all were kind of, well, it's really not our responsibility. We're giving them what we can. If they don't take advantage of it, then they just don't want it enough, So I didn't look at it at that point from that angle. But you see, in 2005, Love in Action had a major protest, and there's a film, a documentary film, called This Is What Love in Action Looks Like. That particular documentary chronicles that protest. It was a huge media frenzy. When that protest started, the internet was still kind of new, and MySpace was kind of out there, and people were into an international connection through the internet. And I started getting emails from countries all around the world, horrible, threatening emails. It was just, people really, really hated me and hated the ministry. And we had, like, the first 2 weeks, so the protest went on for 8 weeks. For 8 weeks, there was somebody outside our door waving a flag or a sign of some kind. But during the 2 first weeks, I was on the local news 24 times. We started getting challenges from the mental health organizations, from the drug and alcohol licensure organizations, from child protective services. They were challenging our organization. They were challenging our structures. They were challenging our legitimacy. And it was really, really hard. It was very painful. It was just an everyday battle just to stay doing what we were supposed to do. That was a turning point. That was a major, major turning point. I've often said that was one of the most effective protests I've ever seen done. Because it was done in love. The people on the street were kind, they were loving, they were caring, and that was just overwhelming to me. To drive out of our driveway having these people saying, we love you, God loves you, and yet they were like a machete, a machine gun, firing at the organization with that kind of love. It was very, very challenging. And it started something internally where our staff started splitting. We started having staff issues, staff problems, conflicts, because we couldn't seem to find a balance in all that. It was really, really difficult internally, and it was something we didn't talk about much publicly. So people didn't really know that was going on, because I was just horrified. I mean, every day I'd go to work and I would almost just shut my door. I had no idea what to do about it all. I didn't know how to manage it. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to bring unity. People started getting angry at me. My staff was angry at me. I was angry at them. It was 2 years from 3 years, 2005 through 2008, of just constant internal battles.
Do you know what started all the protesting? Was there articles that come out? I have done a little bit of research on Love in Action. I know there's some stories of some teens, I think, that did take their lives after the program, but had that news gotten out yet? Is that what was making people react?
It was started because we started a program for minors, and it was a day program, meaning they'd come to the office for the day, and we'd have special groups, special projects for them, and it was a summer program. And the first one we led, a guy named Zach came into it, and Zach told his MySpace friends, my parents are putting me into this ex-gay camp, and I don't really want to be there, but they're not giving me any options. I have to go. And so his young friends, his teenage friends, created this protest. And it was organized, partially organized by a man named Morgan Fox, and he was a documentary film artist. So he brought his cameras, and that's what created the documentary. And that's what started it, was the whole MySpace thing. Wow. And it went viral. I mean, it just went absolutely viral. Yeah. People feeling sorry for this kid. And of course, you know, we thought what we were doing was right, and we were saving the lives of these kids from going off into the dangers of homosexuality, and their parents were committed to it. And afterwards, of course, we found out that some of these kids were going back home to a huge conflict. You know, they were going back home to a terrifying family situation. But we didn't know that, because these kids didn't really tell us that. You know, we didn't know how to, eventually, we stopped that program, and I stopped it. I said, this program is not working. If these kids are going back home to a dysfunctional family, we are not going to do this anymore. We're going to offer a program for who? For the parents. And so we completely changed the program to a parents program, meaning if you're having issues with your kids and their homosexuality, guess what? You're going to come to Love in Action, and we're going to work with you in terms of your communication, in terms of your family relationships, in terms of how you function. You're going to be our project, not your kids. Now, if your kids want to come willingly, they're welcome to come, but they will not come unless they're willing to do it. So I think we made a very healthy decision and a good decision to turn it around. And but nonetheless, we still had all these issues going on inside.
Yeah, I mean, that's not as bad as the other situation, but then there will be kids that have to deal with those parents that are using these methods, telling them that they shouldn't be gay. So I guess it's not quite as intense as the conversion therapy programs they were going into, but probably still had effects down the road, obviously.
Sure. And I want to say, you know, and this is almost without being said, but I'm going to say it. The biggest issue with Love in Action was not necessarily the positive things we did, because we did positive things. There were many families that were healed. There were many families that found deeper relationships. There were many families who discovered their dysfunctions and dealt with them. There were many people who came in the program that were struggling with chemical dependencies and alcoholism who literally did not go back to those behaviors. We did have some success, but the underlying issue with the ministry was the whole premise that being gay is wrong. And that, of course, scraped off a lot of the positive stuff. I mean, the very baseline of the organization was wrong. And now that I know that, I can see how it pulled a lot of the positive things out of the program, because the shame and the religious crap that comes with that was bad. I mean, it was faulty, it was wrong, it was disheartening, it was abusive in many regards because of that premise.
Yeah.
We as an organization, as a ministry, as a staff, we were kind, we were, I think, genuine. I think we treated people with respect. There were many positive things, but all the while those positive things were true, we're saying, but if you're gay, it's sinful.
Yeah.
And so that is where the flaw was at. And that's a big flaw. I mean, that's a huge flaw.
Yeah.
But overall, and what I hear as I talk with program clients, almost all of them will say, my staff member was good, my staff member was respectful, you were respectful, you were always kind, we were never mistreated there, et cetera, but the premise was wrong. And this is what was abusive to me, was to be told every day that being gay is sinful and there's nothing I can do about being gay, and you're telling me I need to. The other thing that I believe and I've discovered is the reason ex-gay ministry is wrong is the fact that the belief systems that created it are wrong. The whole, I mean, ex-gay ministry kind of came out of the Jesus movement, but the more mature ex-gay ministry was fueled by the moral majority. It was fueled by the anti-pornography the anti-pornography movement. It was fueled by many facets of the contemporary evangelical Christianity, which, in my opinion, has many flaws. Especially the conservative, which were the churches I was always involved in. And I'm not talking freaky, offline, culty churches, but just your charismatic church, your Southern Baptist church, I was in a Presbyterian church at one point, kind of mainline conservative evangelical churches. And as I look back, were, in my opinion, abusive. They were abusive to their people.
Yeah.
They were abusive to all of their people because of the messages, because of the restrictions, because of the shame, because of the constant hammering of sin and broken and damaged and your heart is deceitful. And all of those organizations fueled and loved ex-gay ministry. Ex-gay ministry became their scapegoat. Ex-gay ministry became their mouthpiece against homosexuality. They would call me in and want me to speak, and I'd feel affirmed, like, oh, yay, they want me to speak, and yay, you did a great job, and wow, you have a powerful testimony. But to find out later that the church leadership was using me because they didn't want to have to deal with it. And so I was used, and that isn't just a perception, that's truly from people that were within those circles. They said, oh, John, you should have heard the conversations behind the scenes. You know, they just wanted you to hammer it. They wanted you to hit it home. You know, they wanted you to really attack it. And so for me, I just thought I was doing what's right. But now when I look at the baseline, the purity movement that happened, all of that was so destructive. in people's lives, in destroying their own personal growth and identity and sexuality. It just destroys it. I summarize it by saying this: it's like no sex, no sex, no sex, no sex, no sex. Your body is wicked. Your heart is wicked. Your thoughts are wicked. You're lusting in your heart. Blah 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 blah. And then all of a sudden you have this white dress and this black tux, and all of a sudden you're supposed to be sexually healthy. Like somehow you're supposed to get married, and you all of a sudden know how to have a beautiful sexual expression in your marriage. I mean, that is so dysfunctional. Yeah. And for us, why don't you get married? Why don't, getting married, that's a way that you can have sex. That's a way you can have a godly relationship. So I got married again without any counsel, without any exposure, without any discussion of the reality of a gay man being married to a straight woman. And so I get into it, and it's horrible, painful, challenging emotionally, sexually.
Yeah.
There's so much failure, so much shame and embarrassment that I'm not making it. I'm not living it. And so after 24 years of marriage, of that dysfunction, of going to bed every night feeling like I was an absolute failure, waking up and finally going in front of my wife and saying, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. This is called insanity.
Yeah.
And I finally woke up. And I finally threw a stick in the wheel of the codependency of our relationship. And it's just, to me, it's so pathetic that these organizations and churches and ministries all claim to be such godly organizations, such godly people following biblical counsel. To hear the follow-up stories of all the people that were abused and mistreated by those teachings.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you come to terms with that after being used as a vessel to put that in people's minds? Because obviously now you have all this knowledge and you know how harmful it was. How do you come to terms with that now after realizing how harmful it was to these youth and young adults that you were giving this information to?
The only thing I can do is to be honest, to be reflective, to make amends wherever possible with the least amount of harm as possible, to admit the truth. I can't take it away. I can't remove it. There's nothing I can do. I can be supportive of people who want to talk about it. I can just continue moving forward. In 2008, when I left Love in Action, it took about a year before I was introduced to gay Christians. That was a whole new concept for me. I never thought that could even be possible.
Wow.
And in discovering that, I went to a couple of gay Christian conferences. I was absolutely blown away by the spirit of the people there, the love that was there, the truth that was there. I was amazed at the experiences with trans people who were in ministry. I met a trans woman that was the leader of a trans church. And I looked at her and I met her and had a conversation with her and was absolutely blown away that I had been so deceived by my previous exposure. Because she was an amazing, amazing person. An amazingly godly person. And I don't want to put her on some pedestal because that would not be what she would want. I just was blown away at her authenticity and her realness and her truth. I met men and women that were in gay relationships that had wonderful, long-term, committed, faithful relationships. I met people that were single gay people that found camaraderie at these conferences. I mean, it was a whole world that I was told was ungodly and of the devil and deceived and broken. And I learned very quickly that I had been lied to. Very, very quickly. I had been lied to. And so that just moved forward, and that just started unfolding. More and more exposure, more and more experiences, more and more truth that began to just push this other stuff away. And I kept saying in my mind something we used to always say a lot: the truth will set you free. And the last 15 years of my life, the truth has continually set me free.
What would you say to someone who is currently considering one of these conversion therapy movements that they're not necessarily branded as, conversion therapy, but it's branded as a probably softer?
There's softer versions.
The softer version.
Bethel has something. They're a big movement in Reading. They have something called Changed, which is just a easier way of saying conversion therapy.
Yes.
And then Jonathan and Melissa Helser have this program out on the East Coast that they're pushing for change, but they just keep it really soft worded. But it is essentially conversion therapy.
What would you say to someone who's considering one of these programs?
If someone wanted to go to someplace like that, I would heavily caution them. I would probably let them know that experience and history is clear, has been clear for the last 10 to 15 years. You cannot change your sexual orientation.
You were watching this happen for 20 years. You were seeing people attempt to change people for 20 years, and you saw 500 people go through that program and none of them actually changed their sexuality, you would say, right. Correct?
That's true. And I think about the energy you put out there. Love in Action, by the time I left, had many facets to it that were really, really positive. We had really grown in learning about family dynamics, about communications, about relationships, about how to have healthy boundaries. And we were really good at it. We really did that well. And I'm thinking, what would that have been like if we had supported a person who was gay and supported them in their gayness? We're affirming of their gayness. Yeah. How much more incredibly powerful would that have been?
Would you say the harm was worth the good at this point, coming back to it at this stage in life?
Oh, boy, that is a really hard question.
Yeah.
Was the harm worth the good? I would say you'd probably have to ask the individual. Some people would say no.
Yeah.
Some people would say no, it was devastating, absolutely harmful. I wished I'd never gone. It was terrible. But I really want to say probably 50 to 60% of the people at least would say they would not have done it any other way. That what they got out of it was positive. They've learned the difference. They've discovered themselves. They're authentic. They're living happily as out gay people. What they gained from the program was positive. They have some great relationships, friendships. They learned a lot about themselves. They learned how to be open from inside. They learned how to feel their feelings and to discover what those feelings are, because we were really good at that. And it's like me. I mean, I went through 20 years of that program, to be honest. It was where those 20 years is when I dealt with my dysfunctional family. Those 20 years is when I learned to tell myself the truth about my mom, about my family, about the dynamics, about my dad, about my sisters. It taught me how to feel. It taught me how to address my feelings. It taught me how to communicate when I need to. I know how to communicate well. It taught me how to be honest with myself, to internally evaluate what I'm thinking, what I'm going through. Those are things that continue to feed me today. But on the other side of it, it was also 20 more years of shame. Yeah. And it was 20 more years of living dysfunctionally regarding my sexuality.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the time I was 55 years old, I lost all those years.
Yeah.
I lost all those years to be able to be who I am. And at the same time, 20 to 25 years ago, we did not have the world we do today. And being gay 20 years ago was a lot different than being gay today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And our culture was not prepared. It was not prepared.
Yeah.
And honestly, as a caveat, as kind of a sidebar, I think that Exodus and the Exodus movement allowed our culture to talk about homosexuality in a way that was safe enough for the Christian community to talk about it. I think the dialogue opened up. I don't think 20 to 25 years ago, the Christian world was not able to have a conversation about homosexuality. They were not ready for it.
Yeah.
But we opened the door to talking about it in a way that we still called it sin, but we can talk about it. We can acknowledge it's here. We can look at it. We can kind of think about it. And so, as I've learned, I'd rather things happen right now, get this done, get this dealt with, let's be right now, But the world isn't like that. And so I think we've had a progression, and I think Exodus was part of that progression to get us to where we are today as a whole, as a unit. There were people who were harmed along the way, but there are also people that now are healthy, out gay people because of what we built through those years. I don't think it was all a wash. I don't want to say cancel it was all terrible. I want to try to look at it and say, what can we glean from this, and how can we learn to do better? When we know better, we do better. And we know better now. And so there are people who are doing better now. There's still people caught in the dark ages. There's still people out there harming people. But they're far, far fewer now than they were 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's really complex. I guess there's a lot of different perspectives. I think for me, not having actually lived through those and seeing a bit of conversion therapy, I think in my head, I probably, and saying this all knowing that you were a victim of the ideology as well, and your heart was to care about people you didn't mean to.
Yeah.
If I could have chosen, which obviously I can't, but if I could have chosen, I would have chosen for it not to exist, because for me, I think the belief that you can change your sexuality harmed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now, was there another option? I don't know. And when you say that this did bring this into dialogue, and now we are here today where more and more people are saying you could be gay and Christian, maybe it was instrumental in getting us to where we are today. I don't know. It's really complex. It's nuanced, like you're saying. There's so many factors here. If I had to choose, I would choose for it not to have existed. But I know your experience is different, and I respect your journey and your perspective. Also, like, really happy that you pushed through, because you were a victim of this ministry too.
Yeah.
At the same time as you were pushing this forward, you also really did believe this stuff that was also making you wait and postpone your sexuality, your happiness. But now you have found a husband, and you're living that life that you put off for so long. And you would say you feel very satisfied and no regrets with where you're at with choosing to be gay now. Yes.
Yes. I mean, I have a lot of regret. I can't deny the things I did and said and taught and believed, and the way it impacted other people and the way it impacted me, because I lived it as fully and deeply as anyone could have. Because of my personality, because of how I'm wired, I have to be authentic. And so when I'm in love and action and talking around the country and teaching and reading and leading, I'm living and believing and following everything I'm teaching to the best of my ability. I was faithful for 24 years to my wife. I was faithful against any sexual temptation. I didn't view any pornography. I mean, I couldn't live a double life. That's not in me to do that. So I put it in me as deeply and richly as I could. And so I didn't have any wiggle room. Being a leader, I didn't have any wiggle room. I couldn't have any wiggle room. And so I don't know whether that served me well or not. You know, I wonder if I hadn't been so stringent and legalistic about it, if maybe I had discovered my realness a lot sooner. You know, maybe I had discovered a conflict a lot sooner. So the conflict for me was that I lived it so deeply, I had to finally say, I'm done across the board. I had to finally say, no, I can't do this anymore. I think about my second wife. I mean, she was married 20 years, and now, and again, I can't make choices for her today, but I basically put her in a position of being in her 50s and a single woman again. What's she going to do with that? You know, she thought she was going to grow old as a rocking chair on the porch. She thought we were going to be married forever. And now here she is. So that system, going back to the baseline of evangelical Christianity, set us up for that. It set her up for that. And I won't go into her story, but she's got a whole other history that led her to marry a gay man. You know, she knew I was gay. She knew I was gay from the beginning. Why did she choose to marry a gay man? Why didn't she think that through? Why didn't she say, wait a minute, this man isn't going to be sexually attracted to me. Is that really what I want for the rest of my life? Is that the kind of marriage I want? Why did she do that? I don't know. I can't answer that question. We never talked about that. But I believe She was set up by that evangelical Christian purity movement sexuality scenario to live into the decision she made with me. I think we were both victims of that. And so I can choose to live now to be free of that. She can choose however she wants to live, whatever she needs to live for herself. But my own daughter said it when I came out again, back in the 2012 or so. She posted on Facebook very publicly. She said, "Dad, I'm glad that you're finally getting honest with yourself. I think it's too bad that you spent so many years trying to fix something that never needed to be fixed to begin with.
Yeah.
I just hope that you stop hurting people."
Wow.
Dang.
And that rings in my ears. That rings true to me every day. Her words, her insight, her awareness that's the line. That sums it all up.
Man.
That does sum it all up.
And as I've gotten to know her more in the last 10 years, and my other daughter as well, I've discovered how much harm came to her through the evangelical involvement we had when she was young. She was very harmed by that. She said, "Dad, all I saw was a bunch of hypocrites. They were all hypocrites." She was so harmed. It really, really deeply wounded her. The other thing I'm seeing in her is the way that she supports her own kids and the way that she makes sure that they have the freedom and the liberty to be who they are, whatever that looks like. And because of what she has learned. But she also is in midlife and trying to figure out where she has come from and where she's going. And I guess we all have to do that.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. Your story is just incredible. I mean, just insane.
Yeah. Thank you for the openness and sharing all of this. And it's really, really helpful, I think, for people like us that are still on the closet. You know, some people are even considering conversion therapy that could be watching this as we speak. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I mean, and that's the point. You know, if anyone can gain some courage from it all, then that's a good thing.
Dang. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode. We're really excited to be in season 2. I think there's a lot of deep conversations ahead. We're changing stuff up. We're, trying to push ourselves out of our normal and see what comes up.
Yeah. Nate, could you give us like a quick little recap of what they should expect for this upcoming season?
Yeah, we're going to, again, get into some harder conversations, hopefully talk to some people that have been married and going through all of that. We're going to hopefully talk to a sexologist, which will be fun. Maybe get into some celibacy conversations. Ooh. And honestly, reconstructing. I think we want to talk about what to do when your faith comes apart, what it looks like after, and how to put it back together again. And honestly, my journey is still very much in process. So come on this journey with us as I process everything. We're changing, we're growing, and we want to keep this thing fresh and exciting and useful and sexy.
Wow.
Mainly
Can't get
sexy.
sexier than celibacy.
Wow. Wow, that's a good one. Nice.
All right.
Props.
Well, we will. Oh, wait.
Follow us.
Yeah.
Share us. Like us. Love us.
And if you have the time, give us 5 stars. Give us a little comment.
All the stars.
Let us know what you're thinking.
If there's 6 stars, give us 6 stars, please.
Yeah.
And also, we have a Patreon now. We just announced our Patreon. We're just launching it. $6 a month. We are going to have a live video Zoom where you can join and chat with us, ask any questions. And we're also going to give away a t-shirt for anyone that's a member for more than a few months. And we're also going to give some special video content, which we're working on now. So no pressure to support us, but we do put a little bit of money into this and would love any help if you feel like this is something you'd want to do. No pressure if not.
Yep. Sweet. We'll see you guys next week
on the I Tried to Be Straight
podcast.